Sometimes I give clients advice that makes them go, huh? That's not what we've heard. Today, I'm going to cover 2 unpopular opinions that I give my clients and that I talk about, and that, for now anyway, social media is always changing, that I stand by. I'm going to tell you why. So, I'm Anastasia, I'm your host, and this is No Grey Suits, the podcast. First unpopular opinion, number 1. Now, this one I've believed for ages, and if you've seen me present, you've probably heard me say it. And a couple of people have thanked me for it because it's almost felt like permission. When, as a small business owner, you are either just starting out on social media or you're trying to make a decision to finally jump in and go all out, try and make yourself maybe not hate it so much and, make use of it for your business, the advice that you'll probably come across out there, that I even got today when I typed something into Google, is pick the platform where your ideal audience lives or your customer avatar. LinkedIn for B2B, Instagram for anything that's super visual, maybe Pinterest for party stuff or some creators. Start where your ideal audience is. And to that, I say no. Unless you are already comfortable with social media, unless you're already comfortable putting your business out there, getting on camera, talking about your business, my advice is start where you're the most comfortable, where you do your doom scrolling, where the one that you open when you pick up your phone. That's where I want you to start. Why? Especially possibly baffling if your ideal audience isn't as obviously on that platform. Why would you start there? If you open up Facebook every day and that's the one where you scroll, that's the one where you have a laugh, you watch some videos, you get some information, maybe you engage in some groups, start there. Even if your audience is B2B, or even if your brand or what you sell is super visual and might actually get better results over at Instagram. Start where you spend your time, where you're comfortable, where you already know where the buttons are, where you already know what the terminology is. If you're a YouTube, I can't even talk today. If you're a YouTube watcher, you're probably used to calling little vertical videos shorts. If you are a Instagram person, you're probably more used to calling them reels. Even the little terminology changes like that can just cause your brain to take that split second longer when you're already battling yourself, trying to work out what to say, what to wear. Do I get on camera? Do I do this as a static post? Do I do a carousel, which is also called something different on different platforms? By the way, a carousel is on Instagram, and it is those posts with multiple graphics or images, and you slide through them like a carousel. You move them around and around and around. Off topic. Anyway, start getting yourself comfortable putting yourself and your brand out into the world of social media on the platform that you already know best, the one you spend your most time on. Don't start by going all in on a platform that you don't know very well, that you're not very comfortable with, that You're constantly trying to think, oh, what type of post is this? How should I do this? Another thing to consider is when you are posting on a platform that you already spend a fair bit of time on, you might not realize it, but instinctively, you already have a pretty good idea of what works and what doesn't. And I'm not just talking about necessarily content types, although that's part of it. I'm talking about the subtler things, like what kind of language works best on the platform that you spend your time on. What kind of words tend to stop the scroll a little bit more? What, if you are doing videos, is it face-to-camera videos that generally you see more comments on, or is it comedy skits or dancing TikToks? Whatever it is, you're going to automatically, instinctively have a much, much better chance of making content that is well received on a platform that you already know well. Because you're absorbing that kind of content without realizing it. When, I'll talk Facebook, when you're scrolling through Facebook, something that looks very obviously like an ad, most of the time doesn't get great engagement. There's not usually a lot of comments on there. There's not usually a lot of likes. You know that already. You instinctively know that because you're one of the people that scrolls past it. And even if you don't, if you are the type of person that does click on it, you already know that certain types of content or certain ways of presenting that content show up with more engagement, more comments, more likes, more shares, more tags. I'm not talking hashtags there. They're dying a slow death, but that's a whole other episode. So start where you're comfortable. You're going to be much more comfortable with the mechanics of it, and that is, where are the buttons? How do you upload? How do you add alt text to images? All of that kind of thing, the terminology that they use for the different types of content, or whether your big block of text underneath your content is called a caption or a description. It does differ from platform to platform. And if you're already trying to get over the mindset hurdles of what to say and get the confidence to post anything about your business, put your business out there into the world, then you don't need to add any more complications. Confidence and consistency comes before strategy in this case. Because if you start posting over on a platform that you don't like, that you don't know, that you're completely baffled by, you're not going to stick with it, quite honestly. And you may even be creating content that actually turns that audience off. Now, that might be rare unless you go out, doing something that's really odd. But you're not going to be as well received by an audience if you don't understand what type of content actually resonates with them. And even the same human looking at different platforms expects to see something slightly different. The days of the exact same Canva-made graphic being blasted out to all of your social media platforms with the exact same caption, the exact same hashtags, those days are over. And that's why this idea of get comfortable, get confident, build that muscle memory of just creating content, talking about your business. And by creating content, I don't necessarily mean jumping on and doing video every day. I'm talking about any kind of content for your business, whatever you're comfortable with to start with and build up. Start where you're most comfortable, so you don't have as many hurdles to overcome, but start with just that one platform that you're comfortable with until you're really into your groove. Until you're posting regularly, you're getting the hang of what works, you're getting the hang of how to read the analytics, work out what's working, what's not, what all of the different terms mean. And then when you are ready to add another platform in, and take your time, but when you are ready to add another platform in, you're going to find it so much easier to tweak your content to suit that new platform after you've spent a bit of time on it as a user. To again, now you're learning what that platform wants, what people engage with, what styles of content actually work over there. Then you start creating content for it. And you'll also find the practical side of it a little bit easier as well. You'll be able to go, oh, okay, caption actually means what I'm used to calling description. You'll be able to map that in your mind. Can you tell I've been doing some IT stuff lately? You'll be able to map those different terminology, those different, names for things a lot easier once you've already got one in the bag. Once you're already used to it, it's almost second nature. You're used to talking about your business. You've kind of worked out what questions people ask. And it's a lot easier to take that existing knowledge from trying it and working it out on the platform that you're comfortable with and move that existing knowledge over with some tweaks to a platform that might be a little bit newer to you, but that's where your audience sits. You're also then facing that audience that you really want to get in contact with a little bit of experience behind you, a little bit more confidence. You're coming in with, your little pictures about what you do already up your sleeve. You're coming in already comfortable with what topics people generally respond to and how to phrase those topics, what kind of imagery generally catches people's attention, and then you just need to slightly tweak that for the new platform. So coming into that as more experienced and building that second platform, the strategic platform up with all of that other knowledge and comfort and confidence, I believe is going to serve you a lot better than jumping straight in the deep end. You also put a lot more pressure on yourself because you're thinking, my audience is here, what if I stuff it up? But if you start where you're most comfortable, that pressure's not there. You're thinking, okay, I'm almost using this one as my learning experience. I'm using this one as the spot where I can make mistakes. It's not going to kill anything. Not that anything on social media does anyway. If you make a mistake, whatever, it's social media, dude. But start where you're comfortable. You'll find it long-term a much easier solution if you're not already super confident talking about your business on socials, or if you're restarting or you're giving it a go again. Means the same thing as restarting. Anyway, I'm rambling now. So I'm going to move on to my second unpopular opinion, and this one is actually a little bit newer. So I wouldn't have probably given this opinion a year or so ago. In fact, I know I wouldn't have. But social media changes so often, and it's been through some really big changes recently. Not necessarily social media itself, as in, technical changes with the platforms themselves too much, but how we use it, what content we engage with, what we love. You've probably heard the word authenticity thrown out as a buzzword heaps in the last couple of months. And that's why my unpopular opinion number 2 is over-planning and strict scheduling. It's not helping at the moment. I know. How good does it look when you've got a calendar or a table in front of you with more than a month's worth of posts, all planned out, all scheduled, all done, and you don't have to think about it? I know. It feels amazing, and I totally agree. And it makes me a little bit sad from an admin perspective, but this also makes me very, very happy from a let's actually make this stuff human perspective. When you overschedule everything, as in, you think you don't even have to look at your social media again for another month. At the moment, you might not be actually giving your audience anything that is of value to them or anything that is going to stop their scroll or what they actually want. People want human right now. We are getting used to being in a world with AI. There's a lot of pushback to anything that even remotely feels like AI or over-edited or anything along those lines. We want real. We want connection. We want current. We want relevant. If even unconsciously we see a post and, you can kind of tell that it was just made up by a marketing department 3 months ago and you're just reusing a pretty graphic to sell something, we scroll past now. That's the world we're in at the moment. We want that connection a little bit more. We want that authenticity, for want of a better word. Realness. We don't want to feel like we're being sold to. That's been going for a long time. And scheduling out months in advance or keeping to a really strict, on Mondays we post from content bucket A, on Wednesdays we post content bucket 2. That kind of sort of really rigid thinking for our content at the moment just isn't landing. So much easier from an admin perspective, so much easier from a forward planning perspective. And as business owners, we want to forward plan. We've got enough on our plates, right? But there's also, because social media is changing so frequently at the moment, what you think might land as a really, really awesome post right now, in 2 weeks' time, it's already outdated. And if that happens and you happen to catch it and remember that you've got that post coming out, not only have you now wasted your time making that post because now it's not going to land, and you know that because something's happened, whatever it might be, but then you've also got to scramble to go in to your scheduler, to unschedule it, remove it, and then work out what else to put in its place, or you just put nothing there at all. So we've got to shorten that time frame a little bit. I'm not saying you need to go live every day or you need to throw out the plans entirely. I'm saying add some flexibility in and don't plan too far ahead because you might just be wasting your time because it might all just need to change. A mix is good. Work out what evergreen content you've got that actually does stand the test of time, doesn't follow any trends. It's, and this is what we do in our content days a lot of the time is the evergreen stuff. It's just you talking about, say, the story of why you started your business, who your business serves, what it sells, that kind of thing. Stories tend to very rarely date too badly, unless they get super, super specific on something. So that kind of content is your evergreen content, and absolutely keep your library of evergreen content. And that stuff you can schedule out. You can. But all the other kind of content, you'll find it lands a lot better if it is super relevant to somebody right now. Super relevant. For instance, I actually saw the other day, no, it was my husband showed me, I think, the other day, there was a post that went up by a local page around here, and it was on a Saturday morning, and the post came up, these really hot weekends with the kids, what to do with them, what parks are around that have, water or shade or whatever it might be, things to do with the kids today on this really, really hot day. It was pouring and freezing. Really odd for the middle of Australian summer can get weird like that. And that post came out. My husband came over and showed me and goes, "This was only posted like 15 minutes ago. Has somebody not looked outside?" As a casual observer who does not understand social media, his brain didn't automatically think this was scheduled. He just thought, are these people a little bit thick? And he he was stopped by it. Yes, it stopped his scroll, absolutely, but not in a positive way. And no, not all attention is good attention, because he was looking at that going, well, no, it didn't feel right. It wasn't helpful, didn't provide any value. That awesome post that they put together, they had, photos from different parks. They had, information on how to get there, where parking was, nearest toilets, all of the rest of it. That post was wasted. All of that effort, all of that time putting that post together was completely wasted. We're not going to remember to go back scrolling through that page's history, looking for it when it is a hot day a week later. We're not going to remember that. It lost its relevance just because the weather changed. And it was pre-scheduled. And as a business owner, who is actually going to remember that they had that post that they probably scheduled 3 weeks ago going out today and that the weather doesn't match? I'm not going to remember to go in and check for that. The only time I might remember to go in and check for something that's scheduled is if something has all of a sudden happened in the world, either politically or, I went into my accounts and my clients' accounts on the Bondi shooting day, and I just stopped all posts that day I as quickly as I could, out of respect. But unless it's something like that, you're not going to remember. Don't kid yourself. You're not going to remember that you had a post going out about things to do with kids in the middle of summer on Saturday the 14th, and that day, on that morning, it happens to be raining. You're not going to remember that. But if you hadn't scheduled it 3 weeks in advance, if you had have only been scheduling, say, a few days in advance, but you already had a heap of content made, you just hadn't scheduled it or posted it, you'd be able to grab the right one a couple of days in advance and slot it in or post it live without all of that. Like I say, now there's mistrust happening. Now there's a disconnect happening with that brand from my husband's side. Anyway, me, I just sat there and had a little giggle thinking, they scheduled that too far ahead, didn't they? But I'm in this world. Not all of your audience will be. So they've just wasted a bunch of time. I don't want you to waste your time. I want you to build yourself a content library. Have a heap of stuff sitting there that's ready to go, maybe with some little tweaks if need be. But don't plan it out super rigidly. And, I don't know. I find, I use Monday for all of my stuff, and I have buckets in Monday of different types of posts that I've already created, or just different bits of creative. Maybe I haven't put a caption against it yet or something like that. And I have all of that sitting there ready to go. Maybe a couple of days in advance, maybe on the day. Usually for my own brand, it's on the day. For my clients, it's usually maximum a week in advance. I'll schedule those out. I'll have a look at what's happening in the world. I'll have a look at my analytics and see what's actually working right now. I'll doom scroll for a little while to make sure that, content styles haven't massively changed, that something hasn't become suddenly cringe. And then I'll schedule a post from my content buckets that I keep there with a heap of stuff that's ready to go. For client stuff, it's already approved. It's sitting there undated, already approved, ready to go. I can make some slight tweaks if I need to work with whatever's happening this week in the world. The hard work was done. Now I've just got to post it when it is relevant. So that's my unpopular opinion number 2. And yeah, from a business owner and admin perspective, it does suck a bit. But once you get into a rhythm with it, once you build up a content library and you've got it sitting there, and you're not necessarily thinking of, oh my God, what to post every day, you're just choosing something from a pre-existing list or folder of content, you can actually make it heaps easier. You will find your audience will be more engaged. You won't fall into those traps of posting something that suddenly you've got to either scramble to try and unschedule or delete, or something that just really doesn't land because it's no longer relevant. And you can save the posts for times when they are relevant, when they are going to land, and when all of that work you put into making that post is actually going to pay off. So 2 unpopular opinions today. First, start with the platform you already know, the one where you doom scroll. And second, big long blocks of scheduling your content out. Not working right now. Sorry. Talk to you next week. Bye.